Hello. Hello. Okay.
Wait, you said it wasn't working earlier.
No, now it's working.
Wait, so can we do it? Wait. What?
Yeah.
Wait, what?
You
I have to go.
Yeah, you see.
Do I go first? Why did I have to do this so live? It's fine.
Wait, we're live?
I bet she is.
We're live!
We're live. Remember when you saw when you said
It's the same as recording. What we're doing here is, I know probably you already know, we're doing Canadian Computing Contest. CCC is organized by University of Waterloo. The main targeted audience is a high school student. They're doing the junior ones. You already have 5 questions, and they give you 3 hours, so you can write any kind of language, Python, Java, or C++. And most of the students using Python to solve. They organized by schools. One of my students, who's right now in UTS, he's able to finish all the questions and get a perfect score. But it's very rare. He's only grade 6. most of the students are attending this type of contest are at least grade 7 or 8, right? Let's use Ryan as a benchmark. He doesn't really practice, but he's able to finish 4. The 5th one is very hard. 5th one is equivalent to the first question in senior. I can show you some examples, but I can't even read that, I don't understand. So this is like, when you get to the level. But the benefit used to be, when computer science is popular, and people who take CCC, you get decent score. What are the computer science, right? Just like that. Now, because of the computer science popularity is no longer there, it's still valid. It's a proof of how students, the capability of learning coding. Last year, unfortunately, the score was obviously disqualified because of all the cheating using AI. So they improved the way of judging the Canadian community contest. Anyway, so that's a quick introduction. They're all working on the second problem. I believe one of the hardest in second problem. The first problem is very simple. I'm hoping them, right, at least some of them will be able to attend the CCC in New Year, which is usually February. It's a little bit challenging for them because high school hosted, private school hosted, some of the private school. St. Andrew, if people know St. Andrew, they hosted. I sent that in right over there for testing. The public school, the teacher, it's not their obligation. They don't really host it. A club like this, we cannot host it because they have to trust us, right? We're not a partner, so if allow a student to cheat, they have no control. So it's very strict. Anyway, so if parents want to send your kids for CCC contest, contact whoever the private schools, ask teachers. It has to be a school teacher have the connections with University of Waterloo to set up this kind of exam. Anyway, so the second problem is decent. I want them to explain the theory behind it and how do they develop the code, right? The coding is never the problem, as all the solutions, innovation project, robot, the final outcome is not a problem. It's the way of thinking. I hope they develop some kind of logic sense, just like number sense they develop in school. So I know you don't want to hear me talking. I'll start with Renee, who did a lucky draw and the first one to present, all right? Try to talk over to the microphone.
I'm good.
Okay.
Silent auction. Just a brief introduction. Today we made a presentation based on the second question of CCC and based on the thought process of it. Initially in this second problem, it has two main parts, the loops in it and the input description, which has two parts. Problem description. Let's read this. A charity is having a silent auction where people place bids on their prize without knowing anyone else's bid. Each bid includes a person's name and the amount of their bid. After the silent auction is over, the winner is the person who has placed the highest bid. If there is a tie, the person whose bid was placed first wins. Your job is to determine the winner of the silent auction. Now, we need to figure out what the importance of this is. What's important? We need to find out the buzzwords. So we know that each amount, name, highest, and winner are all important. Later on, I'll talk about this, but winner, name, and amount are all variables. Each. Why each? Each lets us know that it is repeating or this is a multiple, which indicates that we need to use a loop. Loop. And for the second problem, we usually use for loop or while loop. For loop is when you give it a certain number or time that you want the loop to repeat for. And in coding, we write for item range. For stands for the for loop itself. I stands for the index. It's basically like the page number, and it always starts from 0. Index is a special variable that always increases by 1. While loop. While loop is when there is a condition and it is set. The loop doesn't stop until the condition is met. There are two ways to write it. while true, and and then you write your condition of whatever you want to do. In this case, we're using the for loop. Highest/compare. Now, we have a row of all of our bids and names, and we need to figure out which has the highest bid, so we're going to compare. We have to compare the first two numbers. A12, which is already set as the biggest number, we compare. If A12 is greater than B4 is true, then A12, the bigger number, stays as the bigger number. If false, then B4 is now the bigger number. As you can see, it is true, so A12 moves on. And we continue to compare. If A12 is greater than C22 is true, then if it is true, then A12, the bigger number, is still the bigger number. If false, then C22 is now the bigger number. It is false. And now we continue to compare. If C22 is greater than D8 is true, then C22, the bigger number already, is still the bigger number. Elsewise, then D8, which is false, then is now the bigger number. C22 is greater, so C22 is the bigger number. Now we continue to compare until we have the last final number. Now that we have our whole comparison, we look at this graph. However, we see that there are issues. There are 8 numbers, but only 7 comparisons. And we need to know if we need to repeat 8 times or 7 times. And currently we are missing 1 comparison. But if we want to use 8 comparisons, we need to use another number. So we created an artificial comparison that will help without changing the result, but help justify the process. Oh, wait, what happened? So as you can see, we created a variable called bigger. We set as -1. So as you can see in the beginning, although this is not as shown, but in the beginning, they will compare bigger or -1 or 0, and your number, whatever, in this case is A12. And anything in this case is bigger than -1 or 0. So then we have the bigger number is already the bigger number. Variable. The variables are important were talked about earlier. Amount, name, and bigger. These variables are part of the bid. And as you can see over here, we have another loop, which is the if-else statement. And over here, you would see that else. In this case, we don't really need else, as the computer is smart enough to know that we don't need to include this. The final code. After all of that, you are left with this, the final code. To recap, on top, the n equals input, that is our input specification. Then underneath, we define our variables. Then in here is our loop, our for I and range, our for loop, which has our code, or like basically our formula. And inside we have our if-else loop, that is our highest and our compare. And at the end, we print. So that's our final code. I'm done.
All right. Remind me, who's the second one?
Me.
Okay.
Hello, today I'll be explaining question 2 of the 2021 CCC, the silent auction. First of all, what is CCC? Well, CCC is a Canadian computing competition, which is a national coding contest run by the University of Waterloo. It challenges students to solve real-world problems using algorithm thinking in programming skills like Python, C++, or Java. So here are the basic content I'll be going over. Question explanation. The problem silent auction is asking the solver to create a code that can determine the person who bid the highest in the auction. Each bid includes a person's name and the bid amount. If there is a tie, the person who's bid first wins. Input specification. The first line of input is create a line of code to tell the computer how many bids there are going to be in total. The next couple lines contain a person's name on each one line and the amount of their bid. Output specification. The output specification is the person that bids the most money wins. Here's some basic CCC skills. Input. Inputting is a crucial element to each CCC question. Input gives you the certain information for the problem. Comparison. Comparison operators are used to compare two values or more and determine their relationship. These operators return a Boolean value, either true or false, based on whether the comparison condition is met. For loop. For loop in Python is used for iterating over a sequence, such as a list, tuple, string, etc. It allows you to execute a block of code once for each item in the sequence. Here's the code. This code might look pretty hard, so let me break it down for you. The first line is defining the variable n from the input specification and inputting the integer because it is a function integer input. These two lines are variables that are being defined for future use that I'll explain after in the comparison part. This is a for loop that is indexing, which is a small I. The amount of times this loop is determined by the input of n. These two variables are inside the loop and define each name and bid price. Notice you don't use integer input for the name since it's not an integer. These couple of lines inside the loop calculate the highest bid for output. If bid is greater than current highest bid, the new highest bid is the current bid, and the new winner would be the name of the highest bid. So the highest bid is set to -1 before the loop because it's lower than any extra number. This way, the first bid will always be higher. It makes the loop logic simpler and avoids extra lines. The reason you use this is since there are 8 numbers and comparison, you'll actually only get 7 comparisons, meaning you have to add another one. So you would have a variable number, which is -1. So for the highest bid, you would think a regular human would do, well, is 7 larger than 19? Well, obviously it's smaller. However, a computer doesn't think like that. So you would be like, is person A, which bid $7, is larger than person B, which bid 19, is true, then person A would move on. However, this is false. So person B with $19 would bid more. So then you would do, is person B with $19 larger than person C, $15, which is true. So person B would move on. And this would continue going until you find a winner. So this is the result. You put in 7, which is the n, meaning there are 7 people inside your comparison. And as you can see, each number is the same, and the output would be F, because F is the person that bid the most money. And that was my final comment.
Who's next?
That's Mason.
Oh, you said Mason.
That's Samuel.
Today, I will be talking about the CCC water loop. Question 2, 2021 silent auction. First of all, let's start with the problem description. A charity is having a silent auction where people place bids on a prize without knowing anyone else's bid. Each bid includes a person's name and the amount of their bid. After the silent auction is over, the winner is the person who has placed the highest bid. If there is a tie, the person whose bid was placed first wins. Your job is to determine the winner of the silent auction. Let's break this down. So first of all, what is a silent auction? So participants in a silent auction place their bid silently and anonymously on a bid sheet using a bidding number. Each would indicate that each bid would mean that there is some sort of loop involved. The highest bit would indicate that there is some sort of comparison involved. Input specification. The first line of input contains a positive integer n, where n is greater or equal than 1 and less or equal to 100, representing the number of bits collected at the silent auction. Each of the next n pairs of lines contain a person's name on one line and the amount of their bid in dollars on the next line. Each bit is a positive integer less than 2,000. The order of the input is the order in which bits were placed. So here we will write n equals to integer input because, as you can see there, it says that n is a positive integer. So it can't just be an input. It has to be an integer input, which is integer is numbers, and a regular input would be any sort of string. So how do you compare? We have 5 examples here. Person A bid $13, person B bid 15, C bid 46, D bid 23, and E bid 42. We have to ask, is the bigger number bigger than the next number is true? So we ask, is 13 bigger than the next number, which is 15, is true? The answer is false. So 15 will be the next bigger number. Next, we ask, is 15 bigger than 46? The answer is false again. So the next bigger number will be 46. Then we ask, is 46 bigger than 23? The answer is true, so we keep the 46. And then we finally ask, is 46 bigger than 42? And the answer is true again, so 46 will be our biggest number out of these numbers. But wait, currently we have 5 numbers, but 4 comparisons. So we had to define a dummy number. So for example, Bn would be 0. So every time we will make sure that person A's bid will always be bigger than Bn. So coding this, we will know that there is some sort of loop involved. So I use the for loop because you can define how many times you can repeat the loop. And in our case, we have to repeat the loop n times. I also define the biggest number as 0. Every time we also have to define a new name and a new bid. So I made name an input since it is a string, and the bid as an integer input since it is an integer. So we're coding the comparison. We have to ask the same question as we did last time. So is a bigger number less than the bid? And if it is true, then the bigger number will equal to the bid that we just put in. And or else, the bigger number will stay as the bigger number. Now we have to assign the name. Since we know that the name is a string, we have to first define the name as a string. Then, if the bigger number is less than the bid, then the name of the winner will turn into the current name that you just put in. Else, the winner will equal to winner. So to print the result, we write print, brackets, and then winner, which is a variable. So now we're going to test the code. So these are the sample input, and Suzanne is what is supposed to come out. So here, we first type 3, indicating the amount of times we have to input the name and then the bid. And over here, as you can see, the output is Suzanne. The end.
I don't know how you feel. Like, so far, I feel these 3 presenters, their public speaking skills improved a lot. So,
Yeah.
We're gonna find out the fourth.
Tusa and yogis.
This one.
What's her name?
Mason.
This one? You sure about that?
Yes.
All right. Louder, please. All right.
CCC 2021 question 2. CCC. This presentation is about CCC, the 2021 CCC Canadian Computing Competition. Question 2. By doing this problem, it helps us analyze and explain coding problems in our own words. Problem statement. A charity is having a silent auction where people places a bid on a prize without knowing anybody else's bid. Each bid includes a person's name and the amount of their bid. After the silent auction is over, the winner is the person who has placed the highest bid. If there's a tie, the person whose bid was placed first wins. Your job is to determine the winner of the silent auction. Buzzwords. We use buzzwords to help us determine which type of code to use to solve the code. Wait, I skipped something. So buzzword, each. The each in the problem statement means that it's repeated. So to do the solution requires either a for or a while loop. For loop. A for loop is when you know how many times you want to repeat it, but a while loop is when you don't know how many times you want to repeat it. And these two are the formats of the for loop and the while loop. For this question, we'll be using the for loop since we know how many times we want to repeat it. So this is the first part of the code. So this is n, which is how many times we want to repeat it, and this is the for loop, which is the loop that we'll be using. Buzzword, biggest. The word biggest in the problem means that the question is a greater number question. To solve this, we use comparison. So first, we define a variable bigger number to the biggest number in the comparison. So to find the bigger number, we use if the number at A is bigger than the number at B, we keep A, or else we keep B. So first 5 and A. So 5 is greater than A. So no, A is greater than 5. So then we use A. So then if A is greater than 12 is true, then we use 12. So 12 is greater, so we use 12. And we keep doing that until we find our biggest number, which is 76. We also have to give a name to the number since the question asks for the name of the winner and not just the number. But wait, there's a problem. Currently we have 8 numbers and 7 comparisons, but we need to know how many times we repeat the loop. So in this case, we add another number, which is the variable bigger, while not affecting the final output. So the bigger number is -1 or 0. So code. So these lines of code are defining the name and bid of each person. These lines of code is the comparison to see if the bid was bigger than the previous one, and redefines each bid and name to the bigger number if it's bigger. This part of the code means that if the bid was not bigger than the previous bid, then the bigger number stays the same. And finally, this part shows which bid was the highest in the end. So this is the full code. Thank you for listening.
There's some errors in the code, all right?
Oh, I don't go yet.
Your bigger variable and the winner is supposed to be outside the loop
I know.
and not in. Who's next? Who's next?
Kingsley.
Kingsley?
Okay,
Okay, you said you have control.
yeah, I can do
Okay, let's try that.
Yeah, just disconnect it.
Seven, 9, and 8.
Yeah.
CCC Junior 2 2021 Silent Auction. So before we get started, I'd like to describe what is CCC. CCC stands for Canadian Competing Competition, which is a competition that is held every single year by University of Waterloo. In this contest, you are supposed to use Python coding or any other coding language to solve 5 questions. We are going to be solving this problem today called silent auction. And a summary of this problem is we are supposed to figure out who has placed the highest bid in the end. Now, we can clearly see there are 3 sections, including the problem description, the input specification, and the output specification. Let's dive deeper into what this is. So let's start off with the problem description. A silent auction is where people will place bets on a prize, but no one knows what the other person is betting. So in our code right now, we are required to enter a person's name and how much they are betting. But on some rare occasions, people might bet the same price. And when this happens, our code will know whoever bet first will get the win. During the input specification, we are going to have a variable named n, which is how many people that are going to be betting. N has to be greater than 1, but it cannot be greater than 100. Our output specification is very easy. After the code is finished, it should show us who has won the silent auction. Using our current CCC knowledge, we can see that there has to be some comparisons in here because you are comparing different bids. And there has to be a loop in it because I know that every second question may contain a type of loop, whether it might be a while loop or it could be a for loop. And input, which is the most important part, because our users have to input their name and their bets. This is what our final code looks like. This looks kind of confusing, right? So let's explain this step by step. On the first line, 3 lines of code, we have our definitions and what we are inputting. So N, you will first input how many bidders are going to be. And bigger number is 0 because we want to reset a bigger number at first. Our largest number will always start at 0. And our winner has not been defined yet, so we will just leave it as a string for now. Code explanation. So this is the loop we are going to be using. If you have done Scratch programming before, you may have seen something like this. This is what we call a for loop. We use a for loop when we know exactly how many times we are going to be repeating a certain code. So as you can see, I have name and bid under my loop because we need to input the amount of times that people are going to be inputting. So for example, if I input 3, then there should be 3 options for name and bid. Now, the for loop only works when we know how many people are going to be betting. And our loop will always read as starting from 0. So for example, if we type in 4, our code will read it as 0, 1, 2, 3, because it always starts at 0. This means that it will ask for the bid exactly 4 times because there's 4 integers right here. Finally, we want to know what the I stands for in the for I in range. Well, I stands for an index. In Python, an index is a special variable that can automatically increase by 1 every time it loops. It's kind of like a counter that tells the loop when it needs to stop. So when the eye detects that it has reached 4 numbers, it will tell the code to stop.
Remove your mouse a little and then.
No, it's loading on my computer, but it's not loading here.
I think it's my Wi-Fi. Last time we were Is your Wi-Fi on your?
I have Wi-Fi.
You have Wi-Fi? No, you have to cancel now. When you don't log in, you log in to Wi-Fi at the same time. Yes, cancel the request.
This one's canceled.
It's not connected. Okay. There's a flag request.
Okay. Now, on our last code, this is where we will determine which person has the highest number. We will explain that right here. So as you can see, we have 8 people right here, and our starting bigger number will always be 0. Now, in Python, the computer will always overthink it. So in human language, we might just say, oh, let's not overthink it, but in Python, it will overthink it. So first, we have 2 comparisons between Simi and Sammy. So these 2 people will start comparing, and we are going to say this by, if 20 is greater than 46 is true, then we are going to put 20 in. But since this is false, we are going to put 46, and our new bigger number will be 46. Now we are going to compare Samuel with Jamie, and Jamie is 54. So if 46 is greater than 54 is true, which is false right now, so we are going to have Jamie move on. Now, Jamie is going to be comparing against Luke right now. So is 55 greater than 54 is true, then Luke will move on, which right now it is true, so Luke will move on and compete against TJ. And this loop will continue until we have all the numbers in. And in the end, William wins because he has the largest number here. But wait, we have 8 names, but we somehow only have 7 comparisons. So what we are going to do here is we're going to have another variable called bigger number. The bigger number will always make sure that the starting comparison will always be greater. So we're going to compare bigger number, which is 0, against Simi. So now we have 8 comparisons. The end.
You're too mute.
Is it this mouse?
Oh. I get that. All right.
Hello, so today I'll be talking about the 2021 Waterloo Junior CCC Problem 2 Silent Auction. So let's read the problem description. So a charity is having a silent auction where people place bids on a prize without knowing anyone else's bid. Each bid includes a person's name and the amount of their bid. After the silent auction is over, the winner is the person who has placed the highest bid. If there is a tie, the person whose bid was placed first wins. So our job is to determine the winner of the silent auction. So a silent auction is a public sale in which goods or property are sold to the highest bidder. and people bid for items in writing or by electronics rather than by calling out or raising their hands. So it's done anonymously. So some key parts of the problem description are the words each, amount, winner, and highest. Each shows that there are multiple bids, which means that we have to have a loop of some sort. Amount shows that we have to, person's name and amount shows that those are the inputs that we have to put. Winner shows what we have to output, and highest shows that there is some sort of comparison. The input specification is that the first line of input must contain a positive integer n, where it is greater or equal than 1, or less than or equal to 100, which represents the number of bids collected at the silent auction. Each of the n pairs of lines contains a person's name on one line and the amount of their bid in dollars on the next line. Each bid is a positive integer that is less than 2,000. The order of the input is the order in which bids were placed. So we have to output the name of the person who won the silent auction. So we need to ask for an input for the variable n. And it has to be an integer, so we write n equals integer input. We define a variable by writing the name of the variable equals whatever value it is. In this case, we're asking for the value to be an input, so we have input after the equal sign. This input has to be an integer, so we surround it with the int brackets. So the n defines how many people and how many bids there are, so we have to put those inputs for the names and bids inside a loop. So we write for I in range n. So this basically means that anything written below it will repeat n times. So the input for the name would be name equals input, and bid equals integer input. So the winner is the person with the highest bid. So all we have to do is find the highest bid and print the name of the person who placed it. So in order to find the highest bid, we have to compare all the numbers one by one to see which one is the highest. So first we compare A and B, so 2 and 7. So if 2 is greater than 7, then we would keep 2 as the highest bid, and then compare that with 4. But if it's false, then we'll make 7 the new highest bid. So in this case, 7 is greater. So 7 is the new highest bid. And you compare 7 and 4. So 7 is greater than 4 is true, so 7 is still the highest bid. And then this repeats. So the highest bid in this case would be 102. So the code for this would be, So, however, there we have 8 numbers. We have 8 numbers, but we only have 7 comparisons. So since we're comparing this after every single input in the for loop, they would have to have the same number of comparisons. So before this, we set the highest bid to be a really low number, like -1. So there would still be 8 comparisons, but there would still technically be 8 numbers. So the code for this would be bigger equals -1. This would be placed outside of the for loop, and then the rest of the code would be placed inside the for loop. So if bid is less than bigger, then bigger equals the new bid, and winner equals name, and else bigger stays as bigger. So for the output, we just print the winner. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Close your eyes.
Sorry, close your eyes. Very good. I'm gonna stop. Like.
Hazel did it.